Hello, hello. My name is April Malone with Yes, I Work From Home, and this is the podcast. Today I have Chris Addams out of London with us today, and he is the owner and founder of the Tech Show. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Chris, and let everybody know what you do?
Well, hi. So I am a digital transformation consultant, which mostly means I spend time as a software architect and also working with processes for businesses, trying to make them a little bit better, a little bit faster, that sort of thing. I am the host of that tech show, along with my co-host Sam Gregory as well. We've been doing that since February 2021, I think. And I'm also a founder of a home automation or a hotel automation business as well, actually. I'm just about to get that one off the ground. And I'm a DIY renovator as well. So not only am I working from home, but I'm also renovating it at the same time. And that's only been 4 years so far.
Well, this is why I have my guests introduce themselves because you said that way better than I would. And I was just telling Chris before we started recording, I could read your bio, but I'd rather hear it from your own voice.
I think my bio is different every time I say it anyway. So, we're probably just best going with what comes out of my face at that particular moment in time.
Why don't you go ahead and break it down? How long have you been working from home? How did you get started? And who are you serving?
That's a great question. So, pandemic has definitely triggered more working from home, certainly. I have been, before, if we go sort of pre-pandemic, I've been working doing digital transformation consulting for a long time now. We're probably getting on for sort of 6 or so years on that. But I think it's probably the 2 years prior to the pandemic. I was working 2 days a week, 3 days a week in Birmingham, UK, and the other 2 days were working from home. So I was a mixture, a sort of blend of being in the office and working from home. And I think the thing that was a little bit different for me is my whole industry has always been, obviously technology has always been, there's a huge thing around co-location and teams working together and being on site. And I've always been a big motivator of that as well, like leading teams, building successful organizations. And, a huge amount of that comes from being in person. And I was starting to find with the 2 days working at home was a great break from having to travel so much up to Birmingham and back, which from London is it's about 2 hours drive. But it's enough, right? And so we were staying overnight in Birmingham. Those 2 days a week were giving me the chance to review code because I have to do that sort of stuff in my job, or actually do builds myself as well, like building software, or allow me to get into the detail and have a bit more focus time. So you're then starting to create this split between the people motivation and giving people the energy to do their thing versus my time to actually get stuff done. And I was really enjoying that split. I think it became a little bit more difficult when the pandemic hit, where you go, well, actually, how am I going to motivate people from afar? That has always been a challenge in the tech industry. I mean, I'm a former Amazon employee, and we were split all across the world. I mean, I was responsible for launching Prime Video in Europe up to a degree, and we had 45 teams that were in 3 different continents, and so you're having to figure out how do you coordinate people all around the globe, and how do you create that energy, and it's always very different. It's very you don't feel an energy that comes through a Zoom call. It's different. It's very different, and you have to find a way of trying to give that same sort of vibe. So, I've been working from home, I guess, on and off, sporadically, let's say, where I needed to get my head down and get some stuff done. But I've always been a fan of working in person, and I think it's been a huge shift for the whole tech industry, frankly, because I don't think many of us are going back to the office. I just don't think that's really going to happen. So, we had to figure out at the start of the pandemic how we were going to work together. And now, we're going to have to continue to get better at that, because I don't think we're going back. But realistically, it does help us, right? Because we're able to start interacting with more people around the globe. Our companies now don't become restricted by geographic location anymore. Not in the same way. It's very different.
So when you were working in Birmingham those 2 days a week and you were staying over, were you in a hotel? Were you like almost like on a retreat every single week where you were just like so
Yeah,
focused on work?
yeah, absolutely. It was like a work retreat. So we had I think we had a team of about 7 or so people who were staying overnight in hotels for 2 nights a week, which was cool. Actually, it was entertaining. It was quite nice to have a sort of camaraderie, I guess. Being able to build a team and then have a team that is going out for an evening meal together and then is coming back and maybe having some drinks in the bar or those sort of things as well. And so it does create a different vibe. And again, that's a vibe that we lose from working from home, but you can do it if you've got that mixed blend.
So you were less lonely than I was imagining because I thought it was just you that was traveling, but it was actually a whole team of people. Were
Yes.
you like all staying in the same hotel and like talking about work all evening, or were you like going back and just working individually?
We were generally a pretty good team, actually. We generally socialized together and
Good.
we would do a lot of things, which was great, actually. I mean, it would have been extraordinarily lonely, I think, if we hadn't had that. So it was really nice to be able to build a team, to understand. I mean, people were from all over the place. I think I might have been. There was certainly one point where I was the only British person there. We had an Australian, an Egyptian. We had a guy from Abu Dhabi. People from all over the world. So it was really interesting the way we were sharing that sort of culture. Everybody had a different thing that they wanted to do or wanted to talk about, different perspectives, and so we would talk about work, but also in the round we were team building,
Oh yeah.
which was really interesting.
Were these people traveling from their home countries for these meetings or the
Oh
meetups,
no,
or
I
was
mean,
that just like they were local?
this is the nature of London. So we were working for a digital consultancy in London called Palladium Digital, and I'm friends with one of the founders. He's a great guy, and I've been doing work with him on and off for years. And it's his consultancy. They're a great firm. They do really cool product innovation, and they do great sort of digital work as well, developing digital products. And so we were working for a venture capital backed firm to design them a brand new system. It was an organization that had been around for since the 1970s pretty much, and they hadn't really had much of a new technology in there for a while, and so they now got venture capital backing. They wanted to do something really new and unique, and so they'd hired Palladium Digital to be able to deliver this experience. So I was working as a consultant for Palladium to be able to deliver
Okay.
this thing. So there was a mixture of product owners, business analysts, me leading the technical side of things, and we were designing a product, building the product, training their team how to do it, using an outsourced partner from India as well, and an outsourced partner from Ukraine as well, to actually deliver this new product for the business. The nature of London is you have people from all over the world anyway. So all of these
Right.
different nationalities, they were all living in London, and we were all
Living
traveling there
there. Okay.
together. Which was also cool because it meant we could do like a convoy on the way back. So as we were driving down the motorway, we'd have several cars in a row and a way of communicating between the cars, which was
Right.
at least fun for at least a couple of trips.
That is cool. And then where was that was the beginning of your first experience working from home in a hybrid situation. And then when does
Yeah, that was the
Amazon come
beginning
into
of.
the picture?
Sorry, say again.
Oh, go ahead. I was asking, when does Amazon come into the picture?
So I was at Amazon like over a decade ago now, and
Before remote work?
way before way before remote work. So I think the challenge for that was that we weren't working from home in that scenario, but we had to coordinate offices around the globe. So it's a similar issue, but obviously you don't get the benefit of your commute being a few steps, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. But you've still got the same problem of being able to communicate with people, and how do you sort of break through those barriers and be collaborative? Because I think the tech industry is all about being collaborative. Really, these products are created by people ultimately.
So you having that experience though got you one step closer to the international thing that a lot of people are experiencing unexpectedly in addition to working from home remotely.
Well, that's true. I mean, I think there's a lot of tools that are out there that are designed for interacting with people, whether it's something like Teams from Microsoft, or it's Slack, or any of those sort of collaboration tools. In the tech industry, we've been using them for forever. We've been using the prior versions of those. So it's one of those things where a lot of my experience, at least from sort of 2010 onwards, has all been international. So I left Amazon and I went to Tesco, which is I think it's going to rival Walmart in terms of size of supermarket chain.
Okay.
I think it was in the US as Fresh and Easy for a while, but I don't think that worked for them.
I feel like I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, they were around. I was listening to an old Mark Maron podcast the other day, and he referenced it. And I was like, oh, that's funny. But they're live in pretty much live. They exist in as physical stores in most of the world. Just they never really broke America. So. Yeah, I went to go and work for them, and they were dealing with, again, a similar problem where they had 3,500 engineers that were sat in India, and we had people distributed throughout Europe, and you've got to solve a problem of how do you all communicate, how do you all interact with one another, and then how do you deal with time zones. So I think we were, as a tech industry, we're probably ahead of the game an awful lot. And actually, I think largely most of the developers who have always wanted to work from home, because I think if you're a developer, the fact that you have to commute, commuting in London is going to take you an hour each way, generally. That's 2 hours of the day that you've lost that you could have been writing some code, and it's a very different mindset. Right, so you get your head down and you're in this, it's very much in a zone, and if you can avoid having to commute with other people, then I think you'd rather take it. So I think largely the thing that was holding people back was the rest of the business, actually.
Well, and then if you extrapolate that out, then 2 hours a day is 10 hours a week if you're doing a 5-day week, and that's 1/4 of your work week. That you could have. Been doing something else or working more.
It absolutely ramps up. I mean, I know there was a quote that keeps sticking in my mind from a previous business where I really want to name them, but I'm not going to. Maybe I will. I might break in a minute. But the CEO for this business, big firm, and he said that I've not got any problem with people working from home. As long as they do their 9 to 5 in the office first. And you're like, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. And I think, largely we needed this. We needed the pandemic in a way to change people's way of working so that we can actually all go and, absolutely. It pushed it for the right reasons. And, I think now we're probably figuring out, okay, how do we actually reconnect with one another? Because I think it's like one of these, the pendulum swings. Everything always goes from one side to the other side, and we maybe need to bring it back a little bit.
Right, and I have talked about this in the previous episodes. Some of the upsides and downsides, the pros and cons, and like working from home has been wonderful for some people and terrible for some people for different reasons. And so we always say you want to find that balance. And it's not going to be there for every single person, but I think that the more and more the work from home culture is, growing, I guess it's becoming more easy, as people that are isolated, feel that isolation to like an extreme degree, they need to find a way to connect. And for people that are getting their work done better and faster and, more efficiently, their bosses are seeing that, but others can't because now they're trying to juggle too many things at home in addition to work.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge, isn't it? How do you deal with juggling those home things, really? Because it is very easy to sort of get distracted with other stuff that's going on.
You are renovating your home.
Yes.
How do you not renovate? Well, you should be getting your work done.
I think I would rather avoid the renovation after 4 years. So it's
Right.
relatively easy. More the thing for me, it's getting from one mode into another mode. So at the end of the day, and for when we're recording this, this is my end of the day,
Yeah.
end of my working day anyway. So I will be breaking from this podcast and going, right, I know I've got a mantelpiece I have to install later on this evening, so I better get on with that. And then I've got to motivate myself to actually shift modes, move into that mode, and do that. And yeah, it's been difficult, to be honest, more than I'd expected to. But this is the funny thing, like it all kind of weaves together, really. Where we were talking about the hotel, staying in the hotel, when I started. I'd probably been about a year into the renovation when I started working in Birmingham, and we tried to have like an architect and a builder and stuff like that. It's a Victorian property on the outskirts of London in a place called Walthamstow, and it's 120 years old, and
Wow.
that's quite young for the UK, by the way. Sort of
Really?
standard age, I guess, for
Okay.
this part of London. Probably quite significantly old for America, but I guess because it's so old, a lot of it needed completely destroying. So we went entirely back to brick with everything. We've replaced all of the floors. We've replaced all of the. It was actually illegally converted into two flats, so we've converted it back into a single house. But it was a great opportunity to go, well, actually, we should put some automation in here as well, and we should, have a better way of controlling the heating. Like, I don't want to just turn the heating on and have a default setting for the whole house. I want to be able to control the rooms individually, and which is unusual, definitely for the UK. And I want to be able to have like voice control and an app and all that sort of stuff for my house. And in fact, largely it was my wife saying, well, you're techie, aren't you supposed to be able to figure this out? And I was like, well, are you sure you want to go this route? And then here we are 4 years later, and I've created a hotel automation business off the back of it, because this is trying to solve problems for my own house. Like, I got myself into a mess, and now I'm trying to code my way out of it. So, we're still not done after 4 years, but we're pretty close. I'm hoping that we're going to be done pretty much by the end of the year. I mean, we were due to have a kitchen installed tomorrow, which is a replacement for the attempt that I made about 4 years ago. Because some things don't work out when you do them for the first time. But unfortunately, due to the way that things are in the UK at the moment with Brexit and post-pandemic, we have no materials available to us. So my kitchen install has been pushed back like 2 months, I think.
I don't think that's just you guys though, because I think that with the shipping crisis right now, that
Yeah,
everybody is experiencing that sort of thing, probably worldwide.
that is true. I do think we're feeling the pressure of it a little more. I
Okay.
mean, I think especially because we've now not got the deals we had with Europe. So, for example, I bought a tiny window the other day, not available in the UK. Could not get hold of it at all, not until 2022, and we're November 21 at the moment, and I could not get it in the UK. Managed to find a Polish guy, had one, put it in the post for me the following day, but then I had to pay £90 for the import charge, which previously would have been free. So they have all these materials in Europe, but now I can't afford them. That's the other issue that we've got.
Yeah.
So I think, there is definitely a global issue with post-pandemic having materials available, because the supply chains are all disrupted, shipping is all disrupted. But I think we're starting to feel the pain of the Brexit decisions in the UK quite significantly now.
To change gears a little bit, you go back, you were talking about how many hours you might work in a week with plus thing, and you were saying when I asked you a few questions before we met in the Google form, you were saying that you're still working like 60 hours a week. Can you talk about, like, is that split across more than one thing right now? You've got more than one project in mind.
That's true. So I probably put in about 40 hours a week for my main client, working as a digital transformation consultant. And then I haven't really counted up the amount of hours it probably takes me to be a podcast host. I mean, I do. It's quite a lot.
It's work.
Go on, how many? Absolutely, we share this in common. I mean, fortunately, I have a co-host, and so we kind of split the responsibilities. Really, I tend to do the booking side of things, the bit up front, and then a little bit of the marketing side. I do all the automation for stuff as well. So like we've automated all of our all of our behind the scenes database manipulation and sending out the social posts and all that sort of stuff. But then Sam will tend to do the editing and work with the editor on that as well. So so I do the upfront bit, he does the after bit, and then we kind of both do a bit of the social media stuff together. So yeah, I mean, it takes a fair few hours, I guess, and we probably do maybe 1 or 2 recordings a week. That takes 90 minutes. We're talking 3 hours there. And then, most of the automation stuff takes a little bit of the pressure off now, but obviously I had to put the time in to do the automation. And then I am a founder of a hotel automation business as well, which again came out of staying in hotels, being annoyed by that, living in a house, trying to automate that. Hotel automation came out as the natural sort of desire for how I could apply the technology I developed myself and get that out in the world. So I have a small team that works with me on that. We're about to launch it properly.
When I hear you say automation, in my mind I'm translating that to the smart technology that we have. Is that the same thing that we're talking about?
It is, yeah. So the idea is that we have like a tablet. So imagine you walked into a hotel, you would have a tablet in your room, and from that tablet you can change your lighting, you can change your heating, you can order room service, you can book a stay in the restaurant, you can book a table in the restaurant, you can book a personal training session, all of that sort of stuff. And then that gives the hotel also a huge amount of data for how people are using their hotel. But at the same time, they can measure their electricity consumption as well, because all of the things are hooked up, and they are able to then actually deal with a bit more home working. Because imagine in a post-COVID scenario where maybe you had 2 people on the front desk and now you can't have them because you need social distancing. Well, actually, one person can work the front desk remotely because they can chat with the guest and they can deal with the bookings and all of that sort of stuff. So trying to bring some of the automation into some of that stuff, some of that magic into hotels that really haven't evolved very much really in the last sort of 20 or 30 years. We're still working off these magnetic cards that you use to activate your lights and scan in the door, and you stick them in your pocket and your mobile phone wipes them, and then you have to go back to the front desk and get it redone. I've felt the pain of this having stayed in Birmingham. So we're trying to take all of that stuff, and home automation at the moment is a bit like the Wild West. Really, it feels to me it's very like the late 1970s, where there was the sort of home computer boom of everybody. You can get all these magazines and DIY kits, and you can do this, then that, and the other. But we haven't really got the Macintosh yet. We haven't got the big thing that makes it a thing that everybody can use, that everybody can get off the shelf. And that's pretty much what I'm trying to do with the hotel automation business, so that we can actually have something that is the hotels can buy it, we can automate the hotels, it gives you this thing that you can use to give you a lot more functionality. And we still want your light switches to work in the same way, but we want to give you a bit of extra functionality, and we also want you to be able to have a smartphone app for that as well. So imagine you were staying somewhere remote, maybe you were up north in Canada, or we're up north in Scotland, and it's in the winter time and there's a lot of snow on the ground, and you want to be able to put the heating on in your room before you get back because you've been out for a walk. You should be able to do that for your hotel the same way as you would want to do that for your house, So that's what we're trying to do, really. A little bit of spice.
I was trying to imagine like my recent hotel stays, and I guess there still isn't very much in the way of automation. You still physically go to the heating unit and turn up the heat or turn up the thermostat, but the hotel probably isn't tracking per room their usage at this point?
No. And I was talking with one hotelier just in about September time, and this was in Greece, and she was telling me that she has no idea what her electricity bill is going to be from month to month. And that's really difficult. Like, electricity bills are starting to go through the roof. You want to be able to control this sort of stuff, like turn off lights that aren't being used. And I know often you get like, you have to put the key card in to get the lights to work in the rooms, but then they give you 2 key cards and one usually gets left in the room. So there is an attempt at like energy saving technology, but what we're trying to do is to make that a little bit more modern and a little bit more flexible and software driven, really. Because if you wanted to set a timer, it's usually an actual physical timer on some sort of switch behind the scenes somewhere, and that's just so 1980s. And I love the 80s, but we can do better.
Do you think that people will worry about privacy, or that the hotel will try to charge them overages for like using more heat than other people?
Well, that's a funny thing you mentioned, because I wouldn't want to charge people overages, to use your word, for using the heat. But I do worry about the spying, because that's been a big thing in, for example, Airbnbs. And, the idea with this isn't that it's a spy technology. The idea is that it's an assistant. And we did have, so I've done a few prototypes, right? And we were prototyping in an Airbnb as it happened. And we launched a new system. We tried a new system where, we've made the hardware ourselves to do this particular thing. And so it's not particularly elegant when you make your own hardware prototypes. And so it was in a box, like a plastic back box that you normally see, on the wall next to the light switch or next to the light. And the board that we have, the PCB, has an LED on it. And so you can see it glowing through the plastic. And, we just installed this new system and we're like, great, this is great. We've got the new system online, finally managed to get it installed. And it takes a while to install these things. There's a lot of wiring and cabling. And then we get back and we're ready to try it out. And the following day, it all goes offline and we don't know why it's gone offline. And the guest has ripped it off the wall because he thought he was being spied on. And we're like,
oh, of course.
I mean, honestly. And, these are things these things happen,
I could definitely see that from the perspective of the guest, though. Like, if I just saw this weird contraption with a glowing light.
Totally. And I think, part of it is our fault for not being clear about what was happening in that Airbnb. We could have done the messaging better. The other thing is, I think it's a very different experience if you put it in a hotel, because you put it in a hotel, it all of a sudden becomes a premium experience rather than a potential spy. And, I think as long as you're not doing things that look like creepy cameras hidden behind bookshelves, then you're fine, really. I mean, the idea of having a tablet in the room, I think, is cool. It's kind of fine. It gives you a lot more interaction. And I think if it's useful, because, again, it has to be useful. It has to be massively intuitive for people to actually want to use it. So you have to think about, is your grandma going to be able to use that technology, I suppose?
Right. My first thought would be to include a camera cover on that tablet, so
Absolutely.
that people feel like that. I don't know if there would be an interactive option for them to be on camera and like literally Zoom with the front desk or not, or Zoom.
Well, yes, I mean that is that is a plan. So it's good feature development. You will get credited. No, but I think the idea of having a camera cover is a very simple way of saying we care about your privacy. It's difficult when you're doing prototype development in an Airbnb and all of a sudden because that guest was not a great guest anyway. I think they probably would have acted like that regardless, because there were other things that were damaged.
Oh no, what a bad experience for you too. Oh man, you mentioned that you have a wife. Are you both working from home? How does that work in your family?
Yes, we are actually. So my wife is a writer, and she has just she won an award for. Well, she's just recently a writer, I guess. I mean, the last couple of years, she won an award for a screenplay earlier in the year, and she's just made her first short film, which I don't think will be out until 2022, but that should be entered into competitions and things. But yeah, again, difficult having a house that you're renovating and both of you are trying to work from home. So I have an office in, the house is a 3-bed house. So I have an office in the 3rd bedroom. The 2nd bedroom has largely been a workshop until very recently. And Nina, my wife, has been using either she's been using the bedroom to work from, which had a small desk in it. But she has also been using now the front room as well, which the living room. And actually, we've only had a living room for about 9 months. So, we went 3 years without a living room. It's unbelievable. But yeah, so it's difficult trying to do those things. You just got to try and find like little places you can work as a desk, and then it can really get on top of you. Like the idea of doing a renovation, I do not think I would do it again, because there's dust everywhere all of the time, and sometimes it just gets totally on top of you. So imagine you're having a difficult working day, and then you're trying to take a break from your work, and you step out into a building site, and it just adds a different level of stress of like, oh, now I've got something else to think about. You can't just go and have a quiet cup of tea or a quiet cup of coffee or that sort of thing. Realistically, you need to think about, oh, can I go out and have a walk or go and feed the ducks or something like that, to actually completely break from it.
Which rooms are currently being renovated right now? Your kitchen?
Well, right now, my wife is actually staying up north with her mother, so she's in Merseyside, Chester, I guess she is in the UK, and that is because she has developed a dust allergy, which is not the perfect thing to have when you're renovating a house, and we are installing some plaster coving at the moment. So I think you guys have crown molding, right? The wooden crown molding across around the top of the houses. Ours is all made of plaster, and so it's just a traditional Victorian thing, I guess, and it makes a lot of dust. So right now, there is one room in the house. Oh no, 2 rooms in the house that are dust-free. They are the office from which I speak to you from, where I also have my bed and my temporary kitchen, and there is the bathroom. That's it. The rest of the house is just awful. So the living room area, we basically have like an adjoining, in London there's a lot of adjoining living rooms, right? So it would have been a traditional dining room, I guess. We're using ours as a library. So the living room is full of all of our stuff from the kitchen. The library, I'm currently installing a fireplace, hence the mantle I mentioned earlier. So that's full of dust because that creates a lot of dust. The hallway is all just covered in tape and dust sheets and all sorts of stuff. The kitchen was ripped out because it was supposed to be being installed tomorrow, but it's now going to be 2 months away, so after Christmas. So I have a Christmas with no kitchen. And then the 2 bedrooms, I finally cleared out the second bedroom because I've now got like a temporary, almost done garage. And then my master bedroom is just covered in dust sheets again because it all needs painting. And so I'm hoping that the top, because we're kind of like, we're 2-story house, but it's split over 4 floors. Like the front half of the house and the back half of the house are at different heights, essentially.
Like you have a mezzanine and...
It's almost like having a mezzanine, yeah. I mean, basically, it's just a Victorian house on a hill, so it just means we've got 4 sets of stairs, really, rather than 2. So, yeah, the very top floor, I'm hoping we'll have done, like, by the end of the week, hopefully, and that'll be a massive step forward. And then we're working towards getting it all done by the end of the year. So I've had to get some help this year. So I've had to get some builders to help me finish some stuff off, because after 3.5 years, I'd just totally run out of steam, because you're trying to do all of these things, and working as a consultant is one thing. Adding that extra time from doing a podcast is another thing. Trying to get a startup off the ground is an entirely different beast, and trying to do a renovation, I mean, I've just taken on too much stuff, I think.
It sounds like a 90-hour week to me.
Yeah, it probably is. I mean, you sort of struggle to work it out, like how much time you're actually spending on all of these things. And if you try and fit in some exercise as well, then, or even socializing.
So as a writer, she can work anywhere, but does she have to collaborate with anybody locally? Like, is it a problem for her to be off to her mom's for a while?
Not at the moment. So she occasionally has to collaborate. If she's working with a director, or if she's making something, then she will have to collaborate. But again, Zoom is a great thing for doing that, and you can do that from a laptop, which is great. You can do it from anywhere. I know she's got a couple of collaborations that she's got to do. Well, but they're only like little bits. Like, she has to have a call, and then she'll go away and write something, and then she'll have another call. So she sort of dips in and out, I guess. So she can generally work from her mother's house.
And what about you? Would you ever in the middle of the renovation, would you ever consider stepping out and working from like the coffee shop or the co-working space nearby?
Hmm.
Or do you need to be there to help with your contractors who are helping you with your home?
Yeah, if I have contractors in, then I have a lot of questions that I have to answer.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult for me to step away. I mean, I haven't had a weekend in a long time because, I'm answering questions all week when I've got contractors, and then I'm actually doing a whole load of work myself over the weekend as well as in the evenings. That's physical DIY stuff. I would love to be able to go away into one of these co-working spaces, I think. I mean, the problem for me is the distance. Like, I'd actually much prefer to have my own. I have done co-working spaces. So I was working for a consultancy a little while ago. I was part owner of a consultancy called Magic Milestones, which is a great little agile project management consultancy. And we did have co-working space. So we were in central London. And it's the co-location thing that we mentioned at the top of the show. It's great if you're together with someone because you can collaborate and you can come up with great ideas. But it's I don't know. I think on a day-to-day basis, I do like being able to just be here working from home. But I think it's probably because I've got so much stuff on. I mean, I do feed off other people's energy as well. So, it is it's a rock and a hard place, really. I really like being able to just get on with stuff. But again, at the same time, it's great to be with other people.
Are you going to be the kind of person who, once the renovation is done and you're able to take a breath, going to pick up yet another project? Or can you see like an end in sight where at some point you're going to settle down to the 40 hours, 50 hours thing?
I don't think I will ever settle down to a normal 40 hours thing because I just take on too much stuff all of the time. And it's really ironic because one of the things I teach people is limiting your work in progress, and I just can't do it myself. The thing is, if you limit your work in progress, you can generally get through stuff a lot faster. And it's a tried and tested thing in the software world, and yet for some reason I just keep taking on more and more projects. I've got so many things I would like to do that. Yeah, I just need to think about doing them in the right order. I think it makes sense to have a bit of a break. Is that coming across on the Zoom?
A little. What about when the renovation is done? You said hopefully it'll all be done by the end of the year, save obviously the kitchen, which is January. How do you think that's going to change your workflow?
Well, it'll be nice to be able to walk into a kitchen and cook some food again for a change, rather than living out of packets and tins and Deliveroo. Which you probably don't have that over there. You probably have something else.
That sounds really cute, though.
It is sweet. It's got like a little roux as its little logo. And actually, I think we're interviewing the CTO for Deliveroo on that tech show shortly. But yeah, it's like because you don't even have Just Eat, do you? You've got the same thing, but it's called something else.
I don't know what the other thing is. Like I'm thinking Uber Eats and things like that.
Yeah,
like
so
DoorDash.
We do have Uber Eats. Yeah, DoorDash you've got, haven't you? What's the one that Snoop Dogg did the advert for?
I wouldn't know.
Because I know he did the advert. He did the advert in the US because I saw the clip. He did the advert in the US and the UK, and in the UK it's called Just Eat, but in America it's called something else.
Someone that's listening will know and tell us.
Yeah, write in if you know the answer.
What are you eating off of? Okay, do you have like a hot plate or a microwave in your temporary kitchen / office?
I have a microwave, I have a coffee machine, and I have a kettle. And I know a kettle is a rare beast in America. No, it's it's literally just for boiling water.
Oh right, yes, I have had one in the past. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is a rare thing, I believe, in the States.
Before we were recording, you were gobbling up your dinner, your lunch. What was that?
That was a pot noodle of which is, I suppose for a lot of people in the UK, a pot noodle would be considered a guilty pleasure. And I think, your equivalent would be ramen noodles, I think. Mm-hmm. Or, we also have super noodles as well. But it's this kind of, pot noodle is kind of like, I don't know, it's not like, when you get those really cheap packets that are like, for you would be a couple of cents and for us would be a couple of pence. We're not talking that. We're talking like probably about a pound or $1 a pot. So it's
So
reasonable. It's reasonable.
high class
High
ramen
class.
noodles.
It's yeah. It's yeah. So it's a little bit more upmarket. Well, I don't know if it's even considered that in the UK. I mean, it's definitely a guilty pleasure. But yeah, it's yeah, and that's the first one I've had in a long time. I actually they're sort of semi-indestructible, I think. So they usually have a shelf life of about 5 years. But
Right.
I bought one just last year actually, and it was out of date. And I was amazed that I'd bought an out of date one. I was like, how long has that been on the shelf for? And I thought, oh, it'll be fine anyway. It's only out of date by a month. And I was actually very sick of it. So
No.
warning: do not eat stuff that, despite having a ridiculously long shelf life, it does actually expire.
Oh no. Well, you can own it. Like don't feel guilty that you just had this cup of noodles. It was your guilty pleasure, I guess. And sometimes you just need those, right?
Well, I actually just needed some food. I mean, that was the general thing.
Right.
I
Well,
just working out of tins and yeah, it's not great. So it'll be
and
nice
you're
to
kind
have an
of
actual
in
kitchen.
survival mode right now. Like this isn't like the long-term plan. What do you like to eat out of your kitchen when it's functional? What is your first thing that you're going to cook when you got
Oh
it
my
all
god,
together?
that's a great question. What would I cook? I think I've forgotten how to cook. I think, um, well, I mean, my wife and I are both vegan, so we're all completely plant based. So we do like to try every now and again making our own sort of fake meats. I suppose we've got quite good at that over a time. So we make our sort of steak substitutes, which are made entirely out of vegetables. That's about 3 or 4 hour cooking process. So we'll probably, I don't know, maybe we'll go back to doing some of that. I mean, realistically, recently I've got into more like butter bowls and things like that. I just want some fresh food. After eating all of this tinned food and dealing with dust, I just want stuff to be fresh.
Hmm.
And I do quite enjoy the occasional sort of the fake meats every now and again, but like mostly I just want to have like some fresh veggies. Really, that's more important to me than anything.
So you don't have any fridge right now.
I actually do have a mini fridge downstairs, but I'm
Okay.
not really. I don't really have the ability to cook with it, if that makes sense, or use it for cooking. So like, there's not really much that I can do in the microwave or with a kettle.
Mm.
Um, I have had some, little packets of vegetables that you can steam and stuff, but I don't really have the time to even go and do the shopping to go and get these things. That's part of the
Yeah.
problem.
And is that something that you and your wife normally would share? Is like the food sourcing?
Yeah, we would normally share that. I mean, we've done uh, a lot of delivery, supermarket home deliveries, in the
Yep.
pandemic. But we're also very fortunate that we have a really good local shop around here that does a lot of really great organic foods, which is again great for having all of that sort of stuff. But I probably do most of the cooking, I think, when I do cook.
Do they charge you for delivery? Like, is there an extra like 10 for me it'd be like a $10 fee?
$10. Well, that's quite a lot. I think for a big supermarket delivery, they've kind of, because we've got a few competing ones. They're racing to the bottom to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Um, so you end up with like £3 or £4 delivery if it's a specific slot. But I think some of them are even giving it away free now. And also, there's the threat of Amazon Fresh. So
Hmm.
you can get the Amazon Fresh delivery. There's
Hmm.
Sainsbury's and Tesco, which are long established supermarkets, and then we've got like Ocado, which is like the virtual pretender to the throne, I guess. I mean, it's been around for like 15 years now, I guess. But we've been doing supermarket delivery for a long time in the UK, I guess.
I think
Uh,
that we've learned that if you order through the app and for like a
mm,
pickup, so we often do the thing where we would, especially through the pandemic, where we would order all of our groceries online and then they would just load them into the trunk of our car. So we would just
mm,
pull up and they'd open up the back of the van or whatever and just load them in for us. And they weren't allowed to take tips. We could do that through Walmart. We could do that through like the Kroger chain, which is called Fry's here in Arizona.
mm.
But then I think they start to get a little sneaky and they start to like maybe raise the prices of what you buy through the app. So now they're kind of like covering the cost of having the shoppers going around the store for you.
Yeah.
And so if you walk physically into the store yourself, you might get different prices.
That's interesting.
And then if
I
you
mean,
want them to
yeah.
deliver it to your home, it's $10 usually.
Well, we also, one of these things that, Deliveroo as a company was able to do, and I think some of the other ones as well, Just Eat as well. So there's a few, takeaway delivery sort of places, but they've started to add some of the smaller supermarkets as well. So like the corner shops, the corner supermarkets, you can actually order through the takeaway apps. Through them. That's something that came out in the midst of the pandemic. So if you want to do a small shop for veggies, then you can do that, and you're paying the normal delivery fee, which is a couple of pounds really. And if you've got the premium for that as well, I think it's free. I'm not advertising Deliveroo. I'm not intending to.
It's okay. I wonder if it was Instacart that you were thinking of earlier, but that's still usually people going into the different shops and doing like grocery shopping for you. Instacart.
No, I don't think it is.
No, it must be another food delivery one that I just don't know yet.
Yeah. Maybe it's not in Arizona.
So going forward, what would be like a perfect day for you? Starting from the beginning to the end, like including a little bit of, your home maintenance, your home responsibilities, and exercise. You said you kind of dropped recently, but...
Well, I mean, I do like to try and get, if I can, I'll try and get like an hour of exercise in a day. But this is a relatively new thing of trying to be a little bit fitter and healthier.
There's more than I'm getting, so you're good.
Yeah, I've been trying to work out from home, but then also going out and doing like, running for a few miles.
Okay.
So yeah, it's, I guess 5 miles. That's probably what, 8K or something like that.
Wow. But working out working out in your room, office, kitchen, bedroom?
Yeah, I've got like I think it's called like a suspension trainer. It's called a TRX, and it's like this thing that you can. I'm intending to put it in the garage when that's finished. But you can basically hang it over the back of your door, and you can do like pull-ups and push-ups and pretty much any exercise off this thing. It's like 2 handles on a strap that's attached to the back of the door. But I started using that after we'd been on holiday in Greece, and I was with a personal trainer there, and he was using this thing, and I'd never seen it before, and I thought it's absolutely fantastic, so I might as well continue on with that. So yeah, that trying to get in like an hour of exercise in the morning would be fantastic. Realistically, what I want to do, I keep saying realistically, what I would really like to do is to be able to switch full time into working on my startup, and to not have to focus on the house, for the house to be done, and for me to not have to do any work on that, and for any DIY, woodwork, metalwork, all that sort of stuff that I do to be optional rather than compulsory, which it pretty much is. If you're working on a house, you've got to do it because you've got to finish the place.
You got to have your wife back.
I need to have my wife back as well. Yeah, yeah. It's difficult. We spoke on the phone just before this, and yeah, it's hard work. Yeah, so it would be. I'd like to be able to just focus on the startup full time. I do like doing the consulting work for other organizations, but I find the advice a bit better. Like, I prefer to do the part-time advisor role of like, have you tried doing this? What about if you did this? Because I've seen so many companies, I've taken so many companies through sort of digital transformation cycles, and I like being able to point them in the right direction. I would quite like to be able to do that on a sort of more ad hoc basis rather than full time, which I'm doing at the moment. But I kind of need to do the full time to be able to fund the startup and to be able to finish a house, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the ideal way of working from home would be to be able to get up in the morning, do a bit of exercise, work full time on the startup, and have a few days where you would be, if I'm installing in a hotel, to be able to go and visit the hotels and be able to visit clients and that sort of stuff. And the great thing about wanting to do hotels is there's a potential ability to fly all around the world and go and travel as part of the business. And that seems like a great lifestyle to be able to go and do that. And then I suppose that moves from being a working from home to being a digital nomadic lifestyle. And I think, I think the pandemic, if it's taught me anything, is that people who are going to be part of your team can be anywhere in the world. And actually, you get a real benefit from having people all over the world, because you get such a different breadth of experience of having all these different people involved. And also having different time zones is actually can be really advantageous, because you can work around the clock. You can get an awful lot more stuff done. You can go to sleep and wake up and someone's done something. Someone's solved a problem. That's brilliant, really. And then, I would still want to keep doing the podcast, because the opportunity to speak to people and learn from their experiences is, invaluable, really.
Would you keep the house?
Would I keep the house? I think there is, there's been a lot of times where I've been sick of it.
Maybe this is getting to, you should probably discuss that with your wife rather than with me.
Oh, no, we have to. Don't worry, this isn't a new thing. We have both discussed it. I think ultimately we would probably like to go and live somewhere like New Zealand, really, and completely get away from the world. As it crumbles, I think. But I think with the house, it can be quite exhausting. I think we'll probably be happy with it when it's done.
Yeah.
But it's been so painful going through it. I don't think I'd want to do it again. And if we did move somewhere, I'd probably want to keep hold of it, because now we're in a position where we actually own a house in London, and it seemed like a stretch when we bought it, and it was a bit much, especially for something that needed as much work doing as it did. But the house prices in London have continued to go up pretty much only in Walthamstow, funnily enough, which is where we are.
Okay.
Everywhere across London, it's largely stagnated or dropped to a very small growth amount. But it's really
nice investment now.
It's turned into that, and it wasn't when we started, because it was a bit stabby, because we don't really have the gun crime thing, but we have a knife crime problem, and
really?
And Walthamstow is one of the stabbiest, I think, or was. So yeah, a lot of people get stabbed, but it tends to be gang related.
Okay.
So. Yeah, don't worry too much. You can still visit London and not get stabbed.
Do they allow you to operate your home? Would they allow you where you live to operate your home as like an Airbnb while you're traveling the world?
I don't think there's any restrictions on that, because I own it. So there's no...
There's restrictions where I live because of the HOA. Like the Homeowners Association wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, we don't have one of them. So that's quite fortunate. We've just got a local council.
Nice.
So, yeah, I don't think there would be any restriction on that at all. And I think that would be largely what we would intend to do. Hang on to it because it's worth something. It's a reasonable investment. And then to be able to rent it out, or even do like, you can do like swaps, can't you? I want to go and stay in California for 2 weeks, and someone wants to come and live in London for 2 weeks. Then we can do a swap. I think that'd be great to be able to do something like that.
There's websites for that. I have heard of them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that'd be great, really.
Let's talk about for a few minutes before we, head towards the end here. Exactly who do you serve, and like when you do the tech show, what are you trying to accomplish with that?
That's a great question. Because initially, I think Sam and I were just desperate to try and find a way of talking to more people within the technology industry and trying to enlighten people to what happens within the technology industry, but also share some stories. And I think, both Sam and I have done consulting work. He works in a digital agency, he runs a digital agency. And, I talked about the transformations before. We see so many themes that are common. And often you find these things by talking with people. You go, oh, well, you've got the same problem as you've got the same problem. And, this one was solved by doing this and this one was solved by doing that. So actually, if we did this other thing, then maybe it's logic and putting the pieces together. And I think being able to do that for technology within the technology industry was really interesting to me, was to be able to find other technologists and to be able to share their stories, the amazing things that they've done. And there really are some amazing things that people have done. Trying to share some of these stories and give people sort of inspiration, because I found a lack of tech podcasts around. I mean, there was a couple that I used to listen to. Well, there are a few, to be fair, but I found a lack of ones that were sort of industry specific, if that makes sense. So I used to listen to one years ago that I think it was called DevOps in the Banana Stand, I think, which I think is an Arrested Development reference, but I never really watched that. But I used to listen to that, but that was probably like 2012 or something like that, 2013. It was a long time ago. Yeah. And there's so much, this industry is changing so fast. It was more, okay, what can we get out of people's experiences, and what can Sam and I personally get? But, that's got to be useful for other people to be able to listen to. And I think the career development as well is really interesting. So for any student that's listening to our show, we hope to give them some sort of guidance of like how you might start a career in tech and what you could do with that. Because I've met so many students that have come out of university and not known what on earth they're going to do with their career and how they're going to do, whatever. And the industry is so different. I studied computer science, and it's so very different to what you actually study on the course as to what you actually do in the industry. So wow. I think it's it would, I'm hoping that I can give some people some inspiration of how they could go about doing stuff, and hopefully it's an interesting thing for people to listen to. We try not to go too deep into tech, because a lot of this is about business. As you will know from your own show, a lot of this comes down to people, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is about interaction, relationships, building relationships, putting ideas together. And so we don't go, occasionally we go a little deep, but we try to stay a little bit on making it accessible for anyone to be able to listen to that tech show and to be able to get something out of it, whether it's about design, whether it's about product, whether it's about coding, or structuring a business, building a startup. We did a meta one, which was actually on starting a podcast. But again, at the same time, we've met some great people. Like we had a guy called Fred George, who is it was an American fellow who is, I think, probably getting into his 70s now, and he invented a hell of a lot of things like microservices, which is how a lot of the internet works these days. And we've just spoken to a guy called William Addams, who is on our show just coming up this week. I think it's our 40th episode, and he invented collaborative working, actually, as a software. He has the patent for it from 1990, and it's amazing to meet all of these people who've just done such incredible things. Some of them are unsung heroes, and some of them are heroes in our industry. So it's nice to be able to have those conversations and to give something, to people that hopefully is an opportunity to hear someone like William or Fred like years and years down the line. So we try and make that conversation about them and what they did, and it's an archive material almost as well as a podcast.
Interesting. Well, I know when I do these episodes, I feel like I really benefit personally from the conversation. I feel like I'm learning, and it's recording the conversation so other people can learn. But also to not feel isolated, to not feel alone, because that's something that I have heard people say again and again, that they struggle with working alone. And I'm like, now you can hear people that are, dealing with some of the same things. You are not the only person that's dealt with, renovating your home. Actually, Mark Asquith, I interviewed from Captivate FM, also lives in the UK and also is renovating, and also, works out of the same room. You're not alone. Like there's other people that are dealing with
the same thing. And it's good to know.
Yeah. And like, it just makes you feel like, there's, even though I work literally in a room by myself, there's other people that are doing the same thing as me. I feel like that's got to be helpful to somebody out there.
Yeah, I think it's inspiring. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm doing my renovation, for example. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm constantly sort of assisted in my renovation journey by Mark Maron and Conan O'Brien and a number of other people.
There you go.
So I'm learning stuff about relationships as well whilst I'm doing that sort of thing. So it's yeah. I think I think podcasts are a great medium, and I think that they're just sort of starting out really. I know they've been around for almost 20 years, but I think there's I love
More
radio
mainstream.
content.
Yeah, they're
Oh
more
yeah,
mainstream now. It's like on-demand radio content.
absolutely. I mean, I really do love radio. I mean, like, and I listen. You might be guessing, I listen to a lot of American content as well. So, like NPR, for example, I love
Love it.
NPR.
Stuff you
99%
should know.
Invisible.
Stuff You Should Know is the one that we listen to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like the stuff we should know on, and I think what's the other one? I mean, 99% Invisible, Roman Mars. I love his
This
stuff.
American Life.
Yeah, This American Life. I mean, I go through a lot of these because you do when you're renovating. You have to find something to entertain yourself whilst you're sanding or doing
My
something.
kids, I have 3 kids and they're starting to get into it too. So like when we're driving them to school, it's like about 8 to 10 minute drive. And there's a little podcast and they're short little clips for kids called Who Smarted. And so it's like kind of brainy stuff, but like with lots
That's
of
cool.
like, like just a little kid friendly, like audio, I don't know, stuff that they insert. It's gimmicky in some ways, but the people that you're interviewing, would you say half of them are working from home, more or less?
Well, all of our interviews have been over Zoom because we started this. We started recording in mid 2020, and so yeah, they've all been over Zoom. And so I think pretty much everybody has been working from home.
Okay.
I don't know if we've met many people who are actually still going into the office yet, which is interesting.
In your industry. Yeah.
I mean, the industry is quite broad because it covers a lot of sectors because obviously tech is the backbone to everything these days.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's interesting. It'll be really interesting to see how many people actually go back to working in an office. It'll be interesting to see the effect it has on a city. A city's going to become less congested now because everybody is working remotely. I know a lot of people who are actually moving out of the city as well. We did interview one guy quite early on who had left London for the Lake District, which is a very picturesque part of the north of England. And, he was entirely just getting away from the rat race, really, because he could do all of his work in recruiting from home.
I interviewed someone out of Australia, Perth, Australia, and I'm not remembering his name at the moment, but that was one of the biggest parts of our conversation was just that mass migration into the suburbs and how that's affecting home prices and everything too. Yeah, it's a thing, but I think the hybrid model probably will be the future for many companies. I know that's where my husband's company is trying to go. They want to allow people to work from home part of the time, but not all of the time.
What's your husband's company doing?
He is in the semiconductor industry.
Oh, wow.
So they make microchips and things like that.
And so are they trying to do that part-time then? Because I guess there's a lot of that that's quite physical.
He can do 100% of his work from home.
Really?
They prefer him to go on site when he is on call. They used to go into like the clean rooms where, the things were all being made and everything, but they can do a lot of the conversations through, Zoom or Teams or whatever they're using right now.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? People are realizing that they can do an awful lot more stuff remotely.
Yep. And, as they expand, these companies are growing. They don't need to have as much office space. They can have, drop-in desks for people. I think my husband is hoping and planning on having a permanent desk for himself because he's being asked to stay on site 3 days a week eventually. But currently he's 5 days a week at home, except for when he's on call. So they just want to have one person from their team on site in person just in case. But I don't think anything ever happens that he needs to be there. So...
And you've probably answered this on other shows, but how are you dealing with both working from home?
It was it was interesting because it all happened at the same time as our kids were also from home. So
Oh
our
yeah.
kids used to go to school in person, and they were home with us for 16 months unexpectedly. We ended up homeschooling them for the last 5 months, but it was even coming from someone who was personally homeschooled and who had planned on homeschooling the children,
Mm.
when I decided to put them in school, all of that stopped. So we had some curriculum. We have an incredible library of books for our kids, but yeah, that was the bigger challenge, is having, it would be just fine. Like right now, currently, our kids are back in school. They're in a public school. They're in person this year, wearing masks still. They're, partially vaccinated already. But my husband and I are working. So actually, I'm in an office that's in my closet. We gutted out our little small walk-in closet and put wardrobes into our
Mm.
bedroom. And he put a desk into our bedroom. So we're also, we're technically both in the bedroom right now, but I'm in a closed room, and there's two doors in between us. So he's probably in a meeting right now as well. Thankfully, our internet is strong enough to handle it sometimes. Um, so he's never on camera. So he's backed up to our bed. If he were on camera, I think he would just do the stand-up desk thing, and it would just be like
Mm.
the wall behind him. But he never needs to be on camera. The three kids, that was the challenge, was trying to get me working. But then all of a sudden, my kid's iPad wasn't compatible with the meeting that his teacher wanted him to log into. So I was giving up my laptop often. Even I think my kindergartner, to be able to log into her first day of kindergarten, my husband had to give up his laptop, his work laptop, to log in the kindergartner, while I
Wow.
was logging in another kid so they could, have class last year in 2020. Eventually we got everybody a Chromebook, and everybody was in a separate room at some point, and I was having to oversee the kindergartner a lot, so I did have to reduce my hours. That was the challenge. But now that the kids are back in school, it's nice. We have I often sit downstairs. I don't usually hang out in this office because it's a closet with no window. I have a treadmill downstairs. I put it in
Yeah.
front of a window. I can open the window. I can put a board across my arms of my treadmill and walk while I'm working.
Mm.
Um, we often take a lunch break together and go for a walk. So we're liking it. We're liking sitting down. We're just kind of in the honeymoon phase, I think, of like working from home together.
I'm not sure I
But
could. I'm not sure I could work from a treadmill. That sounds hard work.
I walk slow, like really slow, like the slowest it will let me, like one
Mm.
mile per hour kind of thing. So you're just barely moving. So we don't really work side by side at all. He's,
Mm.
often on phone calls and in meetings and focus, and he's more of an introvert and a homebody than I am. So I'm often the one that's like running out and going to get groceries. And I'm currently job hunting. So I'm like working on my resume and collaborating with people and, podcasting or, different things. And so
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
often like talking, and he's often trying to be quiet. And so we don't normally work in the same space, but we do like working. He'll even say it. He's like, working from home is the best because, we were just able to have lunch together and sit and have coffee for a few minutes or go for a quick stroll around the neighborhood and, get back to it.
Oh no, I mean I'm 100% in for the home working. I think it's great. I think it must have been very difficult for those with kids because we don't have kids. So, I think it must have been very difficult for those with kids, as you're saying. But like to get them to focus on stuff, I think must be difficult, right?
It was hard for everybody because it was just such a massive change in our daily life for every single person in the whole family at the same time. I was used to being alone during the day. And then all of a
All
sudden,
changed.
everybody was here. And so I kind of felt like this was my space and my time that I was going to get stuff done. And yeah, it was a big change for us.
Did
Um,
you did it take a while for the kids to settle into actually I'm doing my lesson on my iPad or my Chromebook now?
well, it was hard because nobody knew what was happening. The teachers had no idea how to make it
Yeah.
work. The teachers were figuring out the technology. Um, the admins of the school still didn't know what was up, and like there weren't enough computers to give to everybody. And they're asking you, do you have devices at home that you can use? And we're like, yes, we've got two Fire tablets, an iPad. We're good. And then the ended up that the devices that we had weren't compatible with what they wanted to use. And so,
Mm.
there was just several weeks of just everyone being, in uproar of not knowing what was going on. And that was frustrating. But I think eventually people settled into that rhythm, and we finally figured out, I have a hard time keeping up with just my own stuff, and now all of a sudden having 3 other people's schedules to maintain. And like, they were it's not like they would log in at 8 o'clock in the morning and be done at 3 in the afternoon.
Oh
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
like they'd log in at 10 o'clock for English, and my other kid would have to log into social studies, and my other kid would have to log into her 10-minute kindergarten meeting. And I had timers, like I had alarms on my phone, and the Echo Dot was like going off every 15 minutes with reminders of who needed to be where. That was So eventually we pulled the plug, and we're like, I'm just going to homeschool you. For the last 5 months, we just homeschooled, and we called it game schooling. And we were just playing games that taught lessons like math, strategy and color. I mean, there's a game for just about everything. So, and just using it for, like, there were story building games. Like you tell a story as part of the game. And then the next one would be like, um, and we'd go for long walks together and bike rides. Like, it was nice when everyone was able to just have the same schedule. And so, like, let's go for a bike ride for PE today. And I had math books. Thank God I had math books. When everyone unexpectedly was homeschooling, you couldn't just go buy a math book. You couldn't even buy a headset for a while from Amazon. So like the fact that I even had some of these things in the home was just fantastic. But I actually told my kid, I'm like, if you can just use this math book that I have here, it's like 1 year advanced from what your grade is. I will just, instead of buying the $80 math book for, your appropriate grade, if you can just share the one with your sister who's a year older than you, I will buy you a video game because I will save so much money. So, just little tips and tricks like that.
That's pretty cool. Pretty clever.
You
That
do
must
what
have
you
been
gotta
so hard
do.
work though.
It
That's
was
such
survival
difficult.
mode. Yeah. So I did cut back my hours. I wasn't able to
Mm.
work full time during that time. It was just too much. And thankfully I was, my own boss at that point. Like, I technically was working for 2 ESL companies, but I was an
Mm.
independent contractor, and I could just reduce my hours. I didn't have to, rather than opening up my full schedule for 40 hours a week, I just opened it up for 20 hours a week, and it worked.
Yeah. Do you think in like post-pandemic as well, with a lot of people working from home, do you think that's affected people's perspective on what's important as well? Because you're talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
spending that time with your husband, be able to have a coffee and that sort of thing. It does change your perspective, I think, on what you actually want, right?
Well, it's a huge thing right now, and I don't even know that we're not technically post-pandemic yet. A lot of
That's
us are still
true. I, I,
living as
I
though
think
we're still in the middle of it.
I think we're jumping ahead. I mean, you hear it a lot in the media, don't you, about post-pandemic? But I'm
Yeah.
still wearing a mask everywhere I go.
But we allowed our kids to go back to school this year. Yeah, we are starting to live as though we're on
Mm,
the, way out. But that's why they say that they're having the great resignation right now. So many people have
yeah,
left
yeah.
their jobs, because of childcare or, elder care or some other kind of reason that, they specifically can't work. But others are just like, no, my priorities are different. I want to have this. I need to have that. I'm not going to settle anymore for, this kind of pay or something like that. So I think a
Well,
lot of
yeah.
people, there's a huge shift.
Well, I think that's what for me, start getting a startup off the ground as well. I think it's really important that employees that will work for me will feel valued. So at the moment, everyone's putting in a lot of sweat equity, but I want to make
Yeah.
sure that equity, genuine equity, is rewarded because so very rarely do organizations actually reward equity. And I think, if people are putting in the effort, then they deserve something back. If they're going to do like I did at Amazon, where I would work, I think I did actually count the hours I did for Amazon, and it was about 4 years worth of work in 2 years,
Oh.
which was insane. But that's how they treat people. And, I got nothing back for that really, other than being able to dine out on the fact I worked for Amazon for about a decade, getting various other different jobs. But I
Okay.
think, actually having some sort of financial reward would be, desirable. And I think I expect that that's what employees are going to be looking for in a new world.
Well, and I think that, I've had this conversation again recently, but what the benefits package looks like is people are wanting to know if the remote work is going to be an option. Like, I think people want to know upfront, am I going to be able to have flexible hours, autonomy in terms of, like am I going to have to be hourly? Do you need me to clock in? Do you need, blah, blah, blah. Like, am I going to be offered any remote work, equipment for my desk
Mm.
or my chair or something like that? So I think in addition to just, being compensated, with the living wage, it's important to just, find out like what kind of flexibility are they going to be offered?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's all of those things that become part of the new benefits package, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite ways to communicate? Because you did talk at the beginning about how you had to learn how to communicate with the team remotely, even when you were working in the office, but you're working with international group. What what ways have you learned more recently to build that relationship that you had in person that you can't now?
Well, I think there is still something missing, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
So, in the past, we'd always talked about mechanisms. Like, what were the specific mechanisms that you were using to be able to get people to communicate and talk with one another? And it would be like, a set of, like a cadence of meetings that would give you like a frequent check-in on different topics throughout the week. So, we would do like a project review, which would be, an hour, for example, and it would take in 60 projects potentially within a whole hour, which is going through a lot of projects pretty damn quick.
1 minute per.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny enough, that's a technique we took from Amazon. So that one actually works pretty well. And then we'd have like a thing which we'd call the Scrum of Scrums, where we'd bring all of these different project teams together to do like a 20-minute review of the critical things that were actually in progress at that particular moment in time. And we'd do this for like, anywhere between sort of 10, maybe 15 teams or something like that to check in. And we still do those meetings remotely. And the client that I'm working for at the moment, I'm doing that projects meeting remotely at the moment. There's about 60 people on that call, and I host it as the chair. And obviously, I think it helps to have someone who's going to be quite animated presenting and hosting, because it tries to keep that energy up. So I find that like going between some of these sessions that we would have traditionally done physically, they used to drain. I used to feel relatively drained after them anyway, because it is like performing when you do those sessions, because I am trying to keep the energy up. I'm trying to give everybody a boost. It's probably more absolutely and listen, and figure out what the hell we need to do next. I mean, I'm trying to do that remotely now, and there is still something missing, because there are great tools that we can use now. Like, for years we didn't have a good whiteboarding technology, and there's one out now called Miro, which is just brilliant. Frankly, it's really great. So there's a lot of you can work on a whiteboard remotely with other people. Brilliant.
Do you have to use it in conjunction with another platform, or does Miro
it's just
host?
on the web. It's just on the web. I mean, so you can share your screen, and you can screen share it, and everybody can be logged into the whiteboard, and everyone can be working on it, which is great if you're trying to do like some design of something, because you can just draw on it. Or you're trying to do a retrospective of like what went well and what went bad, and you want to have the equivalent of being able to stick post-it notes on a board. You can stick post-it notes on this virtual board. So there's great tools like that are available that help a lot, but the energy is different. So I mean, I used to do. I have tips and techniques. Oh my word! There are things that I do that do kind of break the ice with these things and try and help people to share things. So I have often done a terrible joke, and it's not the same joke; it's different jokes. But a start of a meeting where you've got to get people to share things, like in a Scrum of Scrums, for example, people could be sharing something that's really bad. Bad news. This thing's going to be late, or we've made a mistake with this, or all that sort of stuff. And I realized that actually if I told a terrible joke, like really bad, where no one laughs and everyone goes, oh God, I'd said the stupidest thing in that session. So then people felt a little bit more comfortable sharing their terrible thing. And surprisingly, it worked really well. So there are things that you can do like that, but that you still miss that energy. There is definitely an energy that's missing when you can't see somebody face to face. But yeah, the tools are much better than we used to have. We used to have like at the Amazon sort of world, we would have cameras pointed at whiteboards, and we'd have cameras that were facing one room and facing another room, so you could see into this other room that might be, you might have a room in London that can see into Seattle, and then when London had gone offline and Seattle were then dialing into Bangalore, so they could see the Bangalore guys, and then we'd pick up with the Bangalore guys and see so it was going round the clock. You would share these conference rooms, and everybody could see into like the war room that might have like 15 people surrounded by monitors working, and we would try and find ways of sharing so we could see each other and see it, but work in a room. And it's funny, you do get a little bit more of that energy can be transferred when it's a room to a room, maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, it can be tricky because now we're trying to do this thing where people go back into the office, and so there might be a room from the office that's dialing in, and then everybody else is remote, and it's weird when you're trying to do both. Like, it can be difficult to try and have it. It generally works better if you're either all on a conference or you're all in person. Mm-hmm. And I think trying to find this hybrid is interesting, but yeah, I think people might start experimenting with some of the VR and things like that. But yeah, there's definitely something missing. Because I think there has been some conversations recently about, do we want to try some of these like Oculus headsets, which I think is the direction Facebook have been going recently, right? Where
really,
yeah, where would you have a virtual office that everybody sits in? So you've got your headset on, and then you can virtually be next to somebody. You can virtually get into a meeting room. Does that feel a little bit more together?
There's I didn't interview him for this podcast, but I interviewed a gentleman who helped found Gather Town. And have you heard of that one before?
I haven't, no, but
look that one up.
I can guess what it might be.
Basically, it's almost like 8-bit, people walking around. But then, yeah, you physically go into a meeting room, virtually go into a meeting room, and then you're talking like this, side by side. Yeah. And you can sit around a table. So I think they're trying. It's still, I'm sure they're, working on making improvements and making it more realistic. But
yeah, I've seen. I've just brought it up now, and I think there's there's a few things that are out there that are a little bit like this. I think the thing that I saw one the other day that was a bit more VR like a bit more, rather than it being 8-bit, was more like virtual reality.
Like I could see it going that direction. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting.
Makes me think of the movie Ready Player One, where they basically just live in that world. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. And, that's certainly a possibility. Despite being a techie, I'm not sure if it's a possibility that I particularly want.
True. But right. Yes.
Because it's interesting that you were mentioning before about like having the Echo Dot and stuff like that, and I don't have any of those. I do have them for testing my home automation stuff, but they're in a drawer generally.
I can see why.
I don't have a smartphone. I've got a little Casio watch, and
no way, really.
My car is 100% analog. So I tend to have to sort of get away from it a little bit. I tend to pull away and pull back from it. So I don't know. The thing I'm most against with the going back into the office is the commute, I think. And then because of the way I work anyway, I find myself when I'm in an office space sort of being at a bit of a loss. Like I want to do something else to distract myself so I can then come back to it with full force, if that makes sense. So at least if I'm working from home, I can go, right, I'm just going to get away and I'm going to think about something else. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to have a conversation with my wife or a cup of coffee or something like that. And then I can come back and it's, different then. Whereas sometimes, I would find myself in an office where I go, I'm just going to go outside because I've had enough. I can't be in this office anymore. And then you have 5 minutes outside, have a little walk and then come back again. And you almost feel a little bit trapped there in that instance because you go, right, well, what time is it? Okay, well, it's like, 1 o'clock or whatever. I've got another 3 or 4 hours to go and then I can go home, but then it's another hour on the tube. And then, you start planning out what's going on in your day of all of the things you've got to go through. So I don't know.
Is there a possibility that you would end up commuting back again right now with the consulting firm or the firm that you're consulting with?
I'm actually going into the office to see them on Wednesday, and we're recording this on the Monday right now. So, yeah, I'm going into the office to see them then. But it also feels a bit weird. Like, I don't know. I think I've got a little bit of pandemic fear, I guess. I never really liked being on on public transport anyway, because I don't know if you've ever travelled on public transport in London.
Not in London.
Yeah, London's interesting because if you go in peak hour, then you know you're guaranteed to have your face in someone's armpit. It's never pleasant, and so you know I don't really want to go back to that, and especially not in a work. Because the thing is, well, now I think everyone's so sensitive to someone sneezing or coughing.
Oh, yeah. Well,
You know.
it might not be as congested as it was in the past.
Well, I did go on a little. I did have to go on a little trip the other day to meet some people again in an in one of the offices in London, and I was really surprised because in London we still have this this rule of you must wear masks on public transport, and I guess it's probably a third of people that are wearing them. I actually think this is the reason why London's had such a the UK has had such a bad outbreak because. We've had things like mask mandates and people just don't do it. And then, no one's policing it. So
it was the same in Arizona when we had them.
I mean, we had an option, right? If everybody had either gone and worked from home and actually worn masks and hidden themselves away for a few months, it probably all would have gone away. But everybody wanted. Whoever thought it would be this divisive to wear a mask? Anyway. I don't want to bring that into. I don't want to bring that into your podcast, bloody hell.
I mean, I think like some people are like, well, this won't talk about the pandemic so much, and I'm like, how can you not? It's such a huge part of our life right now. But yeah, try to get the best mask you can for that ride in.
Yeah, well, I think I'll probably drive in if I'm honest on Wednesday.
That's not a bad idea.
Because I was going to, I was just surprised by how few people in London were actually not even on the tube, but on the street. And then it is a bit weird to go and be in a room with someone who you don't know whether you're friends with them, you've known them for years in some instances, but like you don't know whether they've got it or not. And the reason why I'm probably so affected by it is that my wife actually got long COVID. So she was actually in bed for 6 months as well.
Oh no!
Where she actually couldn't get out of bed. Like she could go to the bathroom, and that would be it. She's wiped out for the day. So I am just, despite the fact that we're both double vaxxed, I'm a little bit wary that I know people who are double vaxxed. Well, I know people double vaxxed who are still getting them, still getting it. So I think it's something to be a little concerned about, I guess.
And I think that, you and I probably both are, people. I like talking with people, and even now, like things are changed, like, especially in the States, talk about divisive, it's all of that plus more, that it's affecting relationships. And so, I can see any kind of hesitancy about heading back in, but I wish you well, and I hope it goes great. I hope it goes very well. Do you have any final things you'd like to say just to the audience, people who work from home? They might be entrepreneurs, they might be freelancers, they might be employees or bosses or managers. Do you have any advice that just in general for people who work from home?
I think the one thing I would say is that people have always, I think a lot of people, and presumably not the people who are listening to the podcast, but a lot of people who think that sort of schooling and your learning stops when you finish school or when you finish university. And I think the most important thing is that you keep learning and you keep trying to find new experiences and you keep looking elsewhere. And I think obviously this podcast is a great example of being able to listen to other people's experiences. And see what other people are doing, and all of the great points that you've mentioned about like feeling like you've got somebody there even though you're working from home. But it is a learning opportunity. There's so much you can learn from. And if you are an entrepreneur and you are working from home, or you are a contractor, then also give my show a go, because we're speaking to great people on that tech show, and I think. We're not that deeply technical. Occasionally we will go a little deep, but if you are interested in what is essentially now the backbone of our society, and how that happens, how that gets made. We reveal the magicians behind the magic that is this new technology. That is our little catchphrase. So yeah, take a listen and see if you can find someone who will inspire you, because we speak to people from all over the world. For some reason, we're quite big in Norway right now, so we've got quite a few Norwegians on, and they've done some amazing stuff as well. But we've had people from all over the globe so far, whether that's India or Africa or America or the UK, or I think we've even had an Irish person on and a Dutch person and a lot of Norwegians. So we're racking them up.
That's a lot.
We're trying to get everybody.
Episodes. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, we're trying to get around. But
And
yeah.
my apologies for every single time that I said the tech show when it's actually that tech show.
That's okay. I thought you might just edit it out at the end.
All right. Well, how can people find you or that tech show?
I'm more than happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn, also on Twitter, and that tech show is at thattech.show. So you can find our website there, and we're also on Twitter at that tech show. I think it's _ but I'm sure we can put something in the notes. Maybe
we'll get in the show notes. You bet. And Chris, why don't you go ahead and spell your name so people can find you on LinkedIn?
Oh yes, it's Chris Addams. So it's double D, like the Addams family.
Very good. All right. Any final thoughts? Or are we good?
I think we're good. I think we got it.
All right. Thank you so much. This has been Chris Addams and April Malone with Yes, I Work From Home, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks.